because then you can feed off the energy of the other actors, and that's a gift too. It's fun. We have 15 minutes.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Oh. Can you give us an example of, you see going cold and they just tell you what to do. What's an example of what they tell you you have to get your mindset for? You know, like if you walk in the door, they say, you have to be earthy, or do they say something like, I want this to be lively or bouncy, or what do they tell you when you walk in? Are you just looking at it in text?
Well, if you're lucky, the script will have notes in it, like as to how the line should be read, if it's happy or sad or whatever. But you really have to rely on the director and say, okay, this person is like this. They generally have a positive mindset, so most of the line should be read like this. And then, if it's otherwise, then they'll tell you. But I mean, generally, you just have to get really good at skimming words really fast to get a feel of the scene. That's what I usually like to do if I get a chance. But in ADR, you're lucky if you get to read your one line because it goes pretty quickly. But yeah.
Also for auditions, usually they'll give you like a little paragraph on the character that'll kind of give you a little bit of an inclination on the age of the character, kind of the stature, a little bit of what the character looks like, besides an actual picture. If they give you a picture, sometimes you just get the text, and kind of from there you can start figuring out what the character is supposed to sound like.
She's gonna pass. What came to mind when you asked that question is, because you said you do little boy voices, and I couldn't at first. Like I didn't know, I mean I did them, but it wasn't a natural thing. So it took me several years I did other characters and I got to do a little boy. And one time I had a session where I had a script ahead of time and I was doing a little boy and I knew what he was about, but you go in and you get directed, so you don't know. So it took me several years working on that character to make it easy, and then the next session afterwards was a little boy that I had no idea what they wanted, but when I went in, it was a little boy that was for an anime, and he had to go look for his mother amongst the prostitutes. That was like, so I went from being happy little boy to really sad little boy. And so you have to have that emotional range when you're playing a character. So I didn't know I was gonna go in for that one after doing the little boy before. So it really exercises your emotional skills and your creative skills, and that's why where the work comes in before you go up in front of the microphone, to know those characters or know your emotional range. And some example.
I find that talking to yourself really helps if you need to develop an emotional range. When KG and I roomed together, whenever we had arguments, I was like, you know what, I need to practice this voice. You're stupid and I hate you! But he didn't take me seriously. What do you want?
This is for Miss Jessica Strauss. I thought you were very amazing as Jerry in Streetcar, and I was wondering, did that voice come from just looking at a picture of her and going, this is what she sounds like, or was it a process?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. That's a little I don't know if I feel like answering that. You know what? That's a great question. So for me, when I develop characters, sometimes that will come from an old audition. Like I developed that character for an audition. I said, oh, this voice came out of looking at this text for an audition. And she didn't get hired. And then I used her again for another audition and she didn't get hired. And then I had that audition, and by that time the character was fully developed, or I kind of understood her innately, and that's when I got to do it. But then Taliesin directed me even further. So you have to be able to take the character and go with the direction that you get in the session. But yeah, that particular character didn't just pop out. That one's, and then when I was doing stage, Jennifer Tilly was in a class, or she was hanging out with the director, And she's kind of based a little bit on her.
You know, because she kind of has a baby voice.
I don't know, I can't do Jill, but I remembered her essence, and so I kind of based it on her and put layers on that. Yeah. There you go.
Stop kissing butt. If we had to pick a role we like the most? Oh, disliked.
Disliked?
Yeah.
You can't dislike the character.
You can't dislike roles because then they won't pay you for them anymore. Well, I mean, I don't know. If I had to pick a role that was like the most challenging for me, then there was this one in Tweety Witches named Koo. Her name was Koo, and she was like completely the opposite of me. Like, I'm friendly and generally positive, but this chick had no self-esteem, no self-worth. She couldn't do magic, which is a big deal, okay? And so like, she was just like this giant ball of self-loathing, and I was like, oh God, this is difficult. I don't like this. I just want to be happy all the time. Pay me to be happy.
I guess I'll go for challenging. There's this game called Eternal Poison. Thank you. Yeah, and my character was so obnoxious. And it was because she had this really high up big voice, and she was always talking like this and very hyper all the time. And it was so challenging because it was going on like that for like 2-3 hours. And she was just always like obedient to her master and just always happy-go-lucky, and it was really up here. I'm like, oh, and I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if this character was in front of me right now, but it was still fun. But that was probably the most challenging, just because it was sustaining that voice, and it was something that I hadn't done, just the sustainment of this particular voice for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and that was just something that I knew I had to work on, was building, you know, that. Yeah.
For challenging specifically, not so much. I actually really like this character, but it was very challenging vocal-wise. I recently had to do a character that they asked me for a previous character that was already kind of deep, but then they wanted it even gruffer. Like, the initial direction was as gruff and deep as you can go. And I basically had to do that with fighting noises and screaming and yelling for about 3 hours on end. And the character kind of dropped all the way down there. And
Wow.
the funny part about it is that there were times that this character acted like a little girl. So sometimes I would have to get that deep gruffness, but then kind of be very sweet and nice, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I ended up in love with it afterwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lauren Landon. Hi guys!
I'm so sorry I'm late, you guys. Traffic was awful, and then I had to park at the Renaissance and like run over here. I'm so sorry. Like with 10 minutes left to spare. Sorry.
We're talking about roles that are challenging, or someone asked us didn't like. So for me, what you were talking about, is yelling. When you have to yell and yell and yell and yell. Like one time I got into a session, I didn't know it was yelling. It was 3 hours of yelling. And I was like, oh my God, I have to yell for 3 hours. What about that little boy I have to do on Monday? So those kind of things are, and there goes that session, So I don't dislike yelling. It's a good way to get out angst, but if you have a lot of it, it can actually tax your voice, and so that's a challenge to be able to take breaks and say when you have to take a break to stop and drink lots of water.
I lied. There is a role that I hate, and I'm allowed to say that I hate it because I did it as a favor for a friend. He was making said production demo for a script. And so I came in at like noon, and I was expecting, he told me, yeah, there's a couple like little like woman parts that you can do. And I was like, okay, yeah, she knows what I'm talking about. So I come in, someone else had been cast originally. He was in the room, but he had been cast originally. It didn't come off very well because he's a guy, and it was voiced by a dude in the Japanese. But it's like, he's like a 10-year-old boy, so that doesn't work very well. So he's like, hey, do you want to voice the main character? And I was like, sure, how hard can it be? 8 hours. 8 hours of talking and he sounded like the love child of Ash Ketchum and Toon Link. Trying to scream and fight as Toon Ketchum is really difficult.
And it came out so good. Shut up. Tough roles. We're talking about tough roles, like on our voices.
Yeah.
Roles that we hate or roles that are challenging.
Roles that we hate.
If you feel like you want to say that you hate a role and you don't want to get paid anymore.
Now's the time to rant, right? Gosh, I actually like all the roles that I've been cast as, but they have been annoying, like vocal-wise. I think there was one point where I had to play a little girl, and she talked like this, like for 4 hours straight, and that got really annoying after a while, and very tiring. So I think that voice, yeah, and I think I did that for an audition once too. I just was like, I'm so jealous, kind of, you know, and it was really annoying. And I think we're out of time, so yay!
What Lauren and I are trying to say is we hate children.
Guys, just to let you know, I think Julie and I and Jason Charles Miller have a signing in like 5 minutes, I think, at 12, I think, something like that. 12 or 1?
It's at 1.
1, never mind.
At 1. But come!